Ever feel like some of the health advice we get is kind of, well, a little off?
Mm-hmm.
Today, we're diving into a book that really takes on conventional medical wisdom. It's called Lies I Taught in Medical School by Dr. Robert Lufkin.
Okay.
Get ready for some serious aha moments, listener name.
Yeah.
Because Dr. Lufkin, he's not just critiquing from the sidelines.
Right.
He's actually calling out inaccuracies he taught as a medical professional.
Yeah, that's what's so fascinating about this book. It's that insider perspective,
Yeah.
He's not afraid to admit he used to preach these same, truths he's now dismantling.
Totally. And his journey starts with his own personal health wake-up call. Hypertension, gout, high cholesterol.
Oh, wow.
He was hit with the works. That makes you think, right? If doctors themselves struggle with these chronic diseases, are we missing something?
Yeah, I mean, it humanizes the issue for
Right.
sure. It really underscores this point he makes. Even with medical training, we can still fall prey to these, common misconceptions.
Right.
He was living that eat less, exercise more mantra, but still facing health issues.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder what he found that made him question everything.
Totally. One of the biggest bombshells he drops early on is about that age-old saying, a calorie is just a calorie.
Right.
The cornerstone of that energy balance model of obesity.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out, not so simple.
No. Dr. Lufkin, he illustrates this brilliantly by comparing how we fatten livestock.
Okay.
We don't do it with fat, right? We do it with refined carbs.
Interesting.
And it highlights how different calories actually affect our insulin levels, which is, huge for understanding weight gain.
It's a game changer. He even mentions this guy, Angus Barbieri, who fasted for over a year.
Wow.
And the crazy thing is, even with barely any food, his body kept his glucose levels stable.
Wow, so Barbieri's case really challenges the traditional thinking about calorie restriction.
Totally.
It suggests our bodies are way more adaptable than we give them credit for.
It's mind-blowing. To help explain it, Dr. Lufkin introduces this idea of the TOR switch.
Okay.
It's this ancient mechanism that controls whether your body focuses on growth or repair.
So imagine this, right? The TOR switch is like a queen in your body,
Okay.
deciding whether to prioritize building new castles, so growth, or maintaining the kingdom, repair.
Okay, that analogy makes it so clear. And if you look at it through the lens of evolution, it makes sense, right? Like our ancestors dealt with these cycles of feast and famine,
Right.
flipping that TOR switch on and off.
Exactly.
But now with our modern diets, it's like that switch is jammed in the on position.
Yes, constant growth mode.
Yeah.
And the result? We're seeing this surge in chronic diseases like metabolic syndrome. It's becoming really prevalent.
Yeah, metabolic syndrome. It's like this unwelcome house guest that just brings all this baggage.
Mm-hmm.
High blood sugar, high blood pressure, unhealthy cholesterol levels, and of course, obesity.
Right, it's like the whole package.
The whole package deal, right?
Right.
Listener name, I'm curious. How many times have you heard those conditions mentioned by your doctor?
It's everywhere.
Everywhere.
And Dr. Lufkin argues it's a consequence of that stuck growth switch, that constant TOR activation.
Mhm.
It really feels like the new normal. Kind of scary.
It is.
What's even scarier is we're treating the symptoms, not the actual underlying cause.
Right. And speaking of symptoms, let's talk about diabetes.
Okay.
A staggering number of people are affected by this.
Yeah.
Nearly half of Americans have diabetes or prediabetes.
It's an epidemic.
It's an epidemic.
At the root of it is this thing called insulin resistance. The body's cells, they just aren't listening to insulin anymore.
Wow.
So the pancreas pumps out even more, leading to this vicious cycle.
It's like a never-ending battle. Dr. Lufkin's a big advocate for using continuous glucose monitors, CGMs,
Yeah.
to really understand how our bodies respond to different foods.
Right, it's like peeking behind the curtain of your own metabolism. I love that.
It is.
One thing that often gets overlooked is fructose,
Okay.
which could be even worse than glucose when it comes to metabolic health.
Interesting.
We focus so much on reducing sugar, but are we even paying attention to the type of sugar?
That's a good point.
It's a big deal.
And here's a chilling statistic. Today, we consume over 4 times the amount of fructose we did in the 1900s.
Wow, that's a lot of fructose.
It's a lot.
No wonder we're seeing these consequences.
No wonder.
It's like our bodies are drowning in it.
Yeah, and one of the most alarming consequences is the fatty liver epidemic.
Right. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease.
NAFLD.
NAFLD. It was basically unheard of a few decades ago.
Really?
Yeah, but now it's a leading cause of liver failure.
And it's so common now. 1 in 3 people have NAFLD.
It's crazy, right? 1 in 3. That's a huge number.
It's a huge number.
What's even more concerning is that NAFLD, it often doesn't show symptoms until it's pretty advanced.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you might not even know you have it until there's significant damage.
It's a silent threat.
It is. But this is where I think Dr. Lufkin's insights are so valuable. He points to fructose as a major culprit in NAFLD.
Okay.
He explains that our liver processes fructose similarly to how it processes alcohol.
So it's like constant low-grade exposure to alcohol.
Exactly, leading to that fat accumulation in the liver. And, this brings us to another area where conventional wisdom is being challenged: heart disease.
So we've seen how fructose impacts the liver, but what about its effects on, like, the cardiovascular system?
Oh yeah, big time.
Heart disease is the #1 killer, and we've all been told to fear cholesterol, embrace statins.
Right.
But what if that's not the whole picture?
Well, that's exactly what Dr. Lufkin is saying. He says focusing only on those LDL cholesterol levels, it can be misleading.
Okay.
Because it's the buildup of plaque in our arteries, not just the cholesterol itself, that really increases the risk of heart attacks.
Interesting.
So you could have high cholesterol, but if it's not forming those plaques, it might not be as big of a deal.
Wow.
For some people, at least.
And this is personal for him, right? Dr. Lufkin's own father died of a heart attack,
Oh, wow.
even though he was taking statins.
Yeah, and it's a tragic example of how, the current approach to heart health, it might be missing some pieces.
Yeah.
There's more and more evidence that statins, while they can be helpful for certain people, especially those who've already had a heart attack, they have their limitations. They mainly target large LDL particles.
Okay, so it's not all LDL created equal.
Exactly. It's like, imagine cholesterol packages, right? Traveling through your blood.
Right.
Statins, they're really good at intercepting those big packages,
Mm-hmm.
but it's the smaller, denser packages, those are the ones that are more likely to slip through and cause those buildups.
Interesting. So it's not just about lowering cholesterol across the board.
Right.
It's about understanding those different types.
Exactly. It's like you wouldn't just focus on reducing traffic without considering the types of vehicles on the road, right?
Right. Makes sense. But what about these other major diseases like cancer? And we've been fighting this war on cancer for decades.
Right.
And it still feels like we're losing ground.
It's tough. And for a long time, the focus has been on DNA damage, right?
Mhm.
That's the main culprit in cancer. But Dr. Lufkin, he talks about this groundbreaking research that suggests this might not be the whole story.
Okay, so what else is there?
Well, he talks about this guy, Dr. Otto Warburg.
Okay.
He was this Jewish scientist.
Mm-hmm.
And get this, he ends up working for the Nazi regime, of all things, because his cancer research was so important to them.
Wow, that's a story in itself.
Mhm.
What did he find that was so groundbreaking?
He discovers that cancer cells, they have this weird way of processing sugar, even when there's plenty of oxygen around.
Okay.
It's called the Warburg effect. And it really challenges how we think about cancer.
So instead of just focusing on those DNA mutations,
Mm-hmm.
Warburg's saying cancer could be, at its core, a metabolic disease.
Exactly. It's like, imagine we're fighting this enemy, right? And we've been so focused on their weapons, the DNA mutations.
Mm-hmm.
But Warburg, he's saying, hey, their power source, their metabolism, that's the real key.
That's a huge shift in perspective. What are your thoughts on this, listener name?
Yeah, I mean, this could be huge. If we can understand those metabolic processes that fuel cancer growth, who knows what kind of treatments and prevention strategies we could develop.
Yeah, it's like a whole new frontier. And speaking of shifting perspectives, Dr. Lufkin also challenges the conventional wisdom on Alzheimer's,
Okay.
which is a growing epidemic, right?
It is.
And the current approach, it often feels like we're just admitting defeat.
Right. It's like, here's a room and some sugary snacks. Good luck.
It's heartbreaking. We need a new approach. What does Dr. Lufkin propose?
Well, for years, the focus has been on these things called amyloid plaques in the brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
They thought that was the cause of Alzheimer's.
Right.
But more recent research is casting doubt on that. Are those plaques really the root of the problem, or are they just the symptom of something else?
Interesting.
And Dr. Lufkin, He points to the work of Dr. Dale Braidson.
Okay.
He's found some really compelling links between Alzheimer's, insulin resistance, and inflammation.
So again, we're seeing those metabolic factors taking center stage.
Exactly. It's like this common thread.
It's like everything's connected.
It is. And what's really exciting about Braidson's research is that it suggests lifestyle changes.
Okay, like what?
Things like ketogenic diets, exercise, managing stress, these could actually have a positive impact on Alzheimer's.
That's incredible. So you're saying we might have more control over this disease than we thought.
Exactly. It's not a done deal. There's hope. And this connection between metabolic health and brain health, it goes even further. You know, depression, anxiety, those are on the rise too.
Totally. Yeah, and it seems like the treatments often fall short.
They do. And you know that old chemical imbalance theory?
Yeah.
It's being challenged big time.
Really? What are they saying instead?
They're looking at the biopsychosocial model now. It acknowledges that it's not just chemicals, right? It's biological, psychological, and social factors all interacting.
Wow, so it's this whole complex web.
Exactly. And guess what? Emerging research is saying that addressing metabolic health could help improve mental health too.
It's mind-blowing. It
Right.
really does seem like everything's connected. So if all these chronic diseases, they share these metabolic roots, is there a way to actually unlock longevity?
It's the million-dollar question, right? And that's where this concept of health span comes in. It's not just about living longer, it's about the quality of those years, living well, you know?
Yeah, totally.
And Dr. Lufkin, he introduces this fascinating theory called the hyperfunction theory, which basically suggests that overactive MTUR signal, remember that growth pathway we talked about.
Yeah, the growth versus repair thing.
Exactly. So that overactivity, that might be what's speeding up the aging process.
So it's not just about wear and tear on the body over time. It's like our bodies are stuck in overdrive.
Exactly. Like we're constantly slamming the gas pedal, wearing down the engine.
Wow. Okay, so how do we slow down the engine?
Well, this is where it gets interesting. Dr. Lufkin talks about this drug called rapamycin.
Oh.
And in studies, they've given it to yeast, worms, mice, and in all these different species, rapamycin has actually been shown to extend lifespan.
Wow. So it's like a real-life fountain of youth.
It's not quite that simple, but it's pretty amazing stuff.
So this rapamycin, it's like tricking the body into slowing down aging, like a calorie restriction mine. Is this like the magic bullet we've all been waiting for?
Well, slow down there. While those results in the lab are super promising, research on humans is still in the early stages.
Okay.
And, we got to remember, rapamycin is a powerful drug, right? It can have side effects. This isn't something you just, go out and try on your own.
Definitely not. It sounds like we need a more, holistic approach. Something that addresses the root causes of aging and disease.
Yeah.
Not just, masking the symptoms.
Exactly. And that's where Dr. Lufkin's seed and soil strategy comes in.
Okay.
He's arguing that we need to focus on both the seeds, the underlying causes of disease.
Right.
And the soil, so the overall health of our bodies.
I love that analogy. It's like gardening, right?
Exactly.
You need good seeds, our genes, and healthy soil, which is our lifestyle, for the plants, our bodies to thrive.
I love it.
So what does that seed and soil approach look like, practically speaking?
So Dr. Lufkin has this plan, right?
Okay.
And there are several key parts. First up, he's really emphasizing time-restricted eating,
Okay.
which lines up with those ancient feast or famine cycles we were talking about.
Right.
Giving our bodies that regular time for rest and repair, that seems really crucial.
That makes sense. It's not just about what we eat.
Right.
It's when we eat, too.
Exactly.
What else does he recommend for, cultivating that healthy soil?
A big part of it is ditching the processed stuff,
Oh, okay.
sugary drinks, processed snacks. Those really mess with our metabolism.
Yeah.
And then really focus on those whole unprocessed foods.
So real food for real health.
It sounds simple, right? But it's amazing how much of a difference it makes.
That's back to basics.
Exactly. And don't forget about sleep
Oh, yeah.
and stress reduction. Those are huge.
They play a role.
Oh, yeah. They have a huge impact on, regulating our metabolic pathways. Everything from hormones to inflammation.
So it really is all connected.
It is. Our bodies are these complex ecosystems.
Yes.
And for real health, we got to pay attention to all the different parts.
I love that. This has been an incredible deep dive, listener name.
It has.
We've covered so much. From debunking those common health myths to exploring like the latest research on aging.
Totally.
What's resonating with you?
Yeah, what are you thinking about?
Are you ready to maybe rethink your own approach to health?
It's a journey, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's at a different stage. Even small changes can make a difference over time, like maybe try that time-restricted eating.
Yeah.
Or just like be a little more mindful of those processed foods. It all adds up.
Yeah, it's about taking control of our health.
Yes.
And that starts with like questioning what we think we know.
Right.
Right.
Figure it out.
And being open to new information.
And don't be afraid to chat with your doctor.
Yeah.
Tell them what you're learning. Ask questions. Work together on a health plan that really works for you.
I love that. This deep dive has been amazing. It's like a launch pad for exploring new possibilities.
Totally.
And if chronic diseases do share those common metabolic roots, like Dr. Lufkin's suggesting, could there be a single unified approach to preventing, like, multiple illnesses?
It makes you think, right?
It does. It's a question worth pondering. Thanks for joining us on this eye-opening exploration. Listener name.
See you next time.